The jungle was alive with strange sounds. The human explorer, David, moved carefully between the thick green leaves, his eyes alert, his muscles tight with tension. The air was heavy, filled with the cries of unseen creatures, and every step seemed to echo with danger. He was far from home, stranded on this alien world, but he had learned quickly that silence never lasted for long here. Something always watched from the shadows. The ground shook slightly as a roar broke the stillness. It was deep, powerful, and terrifying. David froze, gripping the sharpened spear he had carved from alien wood. He had faced dangers before, but this sound was unlike anything he had heard since arriving on this planet. Slowly, he crouched and moved closer, parting the giant leaves that covered his view. What he saw made his blood run cold. A young alien girl, pale and glowing as if touched by moonlight, stumbled through the clearing. Her white silver hair shone against the green of the jungle, and her large eyes were wide with fear. Behind her, crashing through the trees, came a beast larger than any predator David had imagined. It looked like a lion, but its body was thicker, its mane wilder, and its teeth sharper than steel. Its golden eyes burned with hunger as it lunged toward the fragile girl. For a moment David hesitated. This was not his fight, and yet something inside him pushed him forward. He could not stand by while the creature tore her apart. With a shout, he burst into the clearing. Spear raised high, the alien girl froze, staring at him with shock, as if she had never seen a human before. The beast growled, its eyes shifting to David, and in that moment, predator and human locked in a deadly challenge. The beast roared and leaped. David rolled to the side, thrusting his spear with all his strength. The sharp tip grazed the creature's shoulder, making it howl with rage. The ground trembled under its weight as it turned, snapping its massive jaws. David's heart pounded, sweat dripping from his forehead. The alien girl gasped, clutching her chest, her voice trembling with fear. She whispered words he could not understand, but the tone was clear. She was pleading for him not to die. The beast lunged again, its claws tearing through the air. David barely dodged, feeling the rush of wind as the strike missed him by inches. He struck back, driving his spear into the beast's side. The creature roared, twisting violently, breaking the spear in half. David stumbled backward, his weapon useless now. He grabbed a heavy branch from the ground, his hands shaking but his will strong. The beast circled him, growling low, ready to finish the fight. The alien girl stood frozen, tears shining in her eyes, her small hands covering her mouth. David's mind raced. He could not outmatch the beast's strength, but maybe he could outthink it. When the beast charged, David swung the branch with all his force, striking the side of its head. The sound cracked through the air, but it only made the beast angrier. It snarled, its hot breath washing over David as it snapped its jaws close to his face. David pushed back, his muscles screaming, holding the branch between them like a shield. The beast clawed and snapped, driving him back step by step. His feet slipped in the mud, his strength failing. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw a jagged rock, half buried in the ground. With one last desperate push, he shoved the branch into the beast's jaws and dove for the rock. He grabbed it, sharp edges cutting into his hands, and as the beast lunged again, he slammed the rock against its head. The creature roared in pain, staggering backward. David did not stop, striking again and again, his arms fueled by survival and fury. At last, the beast shook its mane and retreated, its golden eyes burning with hatred. It growled once more before vanishing into the jungle shadows, the sound of its footsteps fading into the distance. David fell to his knees, breathing hard, his chest heaving with exhaustion. The rock slipped from his bloody hands, and he looked up. The alien girl stood before him, her glowing eyes wide, her silver hair falling across her delicate shoulders. Slowly, she stepped closer, her hands trembling. David expected her to run away, but instead, she reached out and touched his arm. Her lips parted, and in a soft, trembling voice, She whispered a single word, belong. Her voice was filled with both fear and hope, a word that made David's heart tighten. He stared at her, confused, but also strangely moved. The jungle was still, the danger not gone but waiting, and yet, in that moment, under the heavy silence of the alien world, a bond had begun. The jungle was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy. David kept his eyes on the trees, his breath still uneven, his muscles tense in case the beast returned. He knew it had not gone far. Predators never gave up so easily. The alien girl stood close to him now, her glowing skin pale under the shadows of the leaves, her silver hair clinging to her face. Her large eyes were still wide with fear, but there was something else in them now, something like trust. David forced himself to stand, wiping the blood from his hands on his shirt. He could not stay here. If the beast circled back, they would both be dead. Come on, he whispered, gesturing with his hand, even though he was not sure she understood. The girl tilted her head, watching him carefully, then stepped closer and followed. Together, they moved through the thick jungle, leaves brushing their faces, branches snapping under their feet. David listened for every sound, every shift in the wind. The beast was still out there. He could almost feel its presence watching them. The girl clutched his arm suddenly, her delicate fingers tight on his skin. David froze, hearing the low growl again in the distance. The sound was faint, but it was there, and it was following. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence, and the girl nodded quickly, her chest rising and falling fast. They crouched low, moving as quietly as they could, weaving between the giant roots of alien trees. The light was dim, broken by the thick canopy above. David spotted a cluster of tall vines hanging down from a tree and pulled the girl toward them. He carefully pushed the vines aside and guided her into a narrow hollow between two massive roots. It was small, but hidden. He crouched beside her, both of them pressed close, their breaths loud in the silence. The growl grew closer, heavy steps, shaking the ground. Through the gaps in the vines, David could see the beast, its mane wild, its golden eyes burning as it sniffed the air, searching. It prowled slowly, its tail lashing back and forth. David held his breath, every muscle stiff. The girl trembled beside him, her hands gripping his arm so tightly her nails dug into his skin. The beast stopped, its head turning toward their hiding place. David's heart pounded like thunder. If it found them, there would be no second chance. The beast stepped closer, sniffing, its teeth glinting in the dim light. David slowly reached for a small stone on the ground, careful not to make a sound. When the beast leaned closer, almost near the vines, David threw the stone as far as he could into the jungle. The stone cracked against a tree, echoing loudly. The beast roared and spun toward the sound, its massive body crashing through the undergrowth. David exhaled, his chest burning from holding his breath. The girl sagged against him, her body shaking. With relief, they waited, long moments passing until the sounds faded away. Finally, David pulled the vines aside and helped her crawl out. She stumbled, still unsteady, but she kept her eyes on him, her trust deepening. Safe, David said softly. Even though he knew it was only for now, the girl opened her mouth, struggling with the human word S. Safe, she repeated, her voice soft but clear. David blinked in surprise. Realizing she was trying to speak his language, he gave her a small nod. Yes, safe, she smiled faintly. The first sign of warmth he had seen in her, though her eyes were still haunted by fear. They kept moving, deeper into the jungle, staying low, avoiding open spaces. David found a stream of clear water and gestured for her to drink. She bent down, cupping her hands, her silver hair shining under the faint light that reached through the trees. As she drank, David watched her carefully, noticing how fragile she seemed. She was different from the other aliens he had glimpsed on this planet. Smaller, gentler, almost like a child of light compared to the harshness around them. When she finished, She stood and whispered again, "Belong," her voice trembling, her eyes fixed on him. David frowned, unsure of what she meant. Was she saying she belonged to him, or warning him that the beast hunted anyone who tried to claim her? Before he could ask, the sound of branches snapping made them both look up sharply. The beast was not gone. It had circled back, its golden eyes glowing through the jungle. David grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her into the shadows. Running as fast as he could, the jungle blurred around them, vines tearing at their skin, roots tripping their feet. The beast roared behind them, closer and closer. David's lungs burned, his legs screamed with pain, but he did not stop. The girl clung to him, trusting him completely, her breath quick and frightened. Finally, through the thick leaves, David saw a narrow gap between two cliffs. Without hesitation, he pulled her toward it, squeezing them both through the rocky passage. The beast tried to follow, but the gap was too small. It roared in fury, claws scraping against the stone, but it could not reach them. David collapsed against the rock, gasping for air, sweat pouring down his face. The girl leaned close to him, her glowing eyes full of relief and wonder. Her lips trembled, and she whispered again, this time with more certainty, "Safe. With you." David stared at her, his heart pounding, his mind racing. The danger was not over, but in that moment, under the echo of the beast's roars, he knew something had changed. The jungle was quieter now, though the roars of the beast still echoed faintly in David's mind. He leaned against the stone wall of the narrow passage, catching his breath, while the alien girl stayed close, her glowing skin shimmering faintly in the dim light. She looked fragile, almost breakable, but her eyes carried a strange strength, a silent determination that kept her moving forward, despite the terror she had faced. David knew they could not stay in the passage forever. The beast would not give up. It would circle, wait, and strike again. He pushed himself up and offered her his hand. She hesitated for only a second, before slipping her small fingers into his. Her touch was light, trembling, but real. They moved deeper through the rocks, until the path opened back into the jungle, the air heavy with mist, the ground damp beneath their feet. Every sound made David tense. Every movement in the shadows made him raise his guard. Yet the girl stayed close, watching him with wide eyes, copying his steps, learning how he moved. At one point, she slipped on the wet earth, nearly falling, but David caught her, pulling her gently upright. She looked at him with surprise, then whispered softly, "Safe," as if reminding herself what he had said earlier. David gave a faint nod. Even though his chest was heavy with worry, he was not sure how long he could keep her safe. Not in this world. Still, he kept walking, teaching her as they went. When he bent low to examine strange plants, she crouched too, mimicking him. He showed her how to test leaves for bitterness before eating, how to spot signs of water on the ground, how to listen for birds that warned of predators. At first she only watched, but slowly she began to do the same, her small hands, careful as she touched the plants and copied his actions. David realized she was learning fast, quicker than most humans would. The alien girl then surprised him, tugging lightly on his sleeve and leading him to a tree with large glowing fruit. She plucked one carefully, broke it open, and handed him half. The inside shimmered with a faint blue light. Strange and beautiful. He hesitated, unsure if it was safe, but she took a bite first, chewing softly, then gestured for him to follow. David bit into the fruit, the taste sharp and sweet, unlike anything on earth, yet refreshing. For the first time since the attack, he felt a spark of relief. They ate together quietly, sharing food in the silence of the jungle. Afterwards, she smiled faintly, whispering another word he could understand. Together, David stared at her, surprised. Her voice was soft but certain, as if she wanted to assure him that she was not just following him out of fear. She had chosen to stay with him. As the day passed, they walked further, each step building a rhythm. When David cut vines to clear a path, She gathered pieces of them, twisting them into small ropes. When he searched for sharp stones to use as tools, she pointed out places where the ground shimmered with hidden crystals. It was as if their skills balanced each other. Human survival with alien instinct, but the shadow of danger never left. Several times, they both froze as roars echoed faintly in the distance. The beast never far behind. The girl would cling to his arm in those moments, whispering the same word again and again. Belong. David still did not fully understand, but the way she said it made his chest tighten. Her tone was not fearful anymore. It was filled with something deeper, almost like a vow. By nightfall, they found a hollow under the roots of a massive alien tree. It was wide enough for both of them, hidden under twisting roots that curled like natural walls. David lit a small fire using dry vines and stones, the glow casting shadows across the hollow. The girl sat close, her knees drawn to her chest, her silver hair falling like a curtain around her face. She looked at the flames with wide eyes, reaching out her hands as if amazed by the warmth. David realized maybe her people did not use fire, or maybe she had never been allowed near it. He smiled faintly and pushed a branch into the flames, then pulled it back, showing her how it glowed. She gasped softly, then laughed, the sound light and fragile, but pure. For a moment, the jungle's dangers faded, and the fire's glow made them feel like two survivors sharing a secret world. When the laughter faded, the girl leaned her head gently on his shoulder, whispering again, "Safe. With you." David felt the weight of her words settle deep inside him. He had saved her, yes, but now he realized she gave him something in return: trust, belonging, a bond that went beyond words. Outside, the jungle growled with hidden predators, the roars of the beast distant, but still present. Inside the hollow, under the fire's glow, David and the alien girl sat close, two souls from different worlds, drawn together by danger. And though David knew the fight was not over, he also knew that he was no longer alone. The bond had formed, unspoken, yet powerful, and it was only the beginning. Morning light filtered through the jungle canopy, casting golden beams across the ground. David stirred awake under the roots of the great tree. The small fire reduced to glowing embers. Beside him, the alien girl was still curled close, her silver hair spread like a soft blanket, her breathing slow and steady. For a brief moment, he almost believed they were safe, but the memory of the beast's roar quickly returned. They could not hide forever, and David knew they needed shelter, food, and perhaps allies. As he stood, the girl woke, her glowing eyes blinking against the light. She looked at him and whispered softly. Together, the same word she had used before, a promise more than a question. David nodded, his jaw set. Together, he said firmly, though he doubted she understood fully. They began walking again, deeper into the jungle, following faint trails worn into the ground. The girl seemed to recognize the path, her steps quicker now, her gaze darting forward with both fear and hope. David soon realized she was leading him somewhere. After hours of climbing over roots and pushing past thick vines, the trees finally thinned, and the jungle opened into a wide clearing. At its center stood a village, strange, yet beautiful. Huts made of woven leaves and glowing stones formed circles around a central fire pit, and tall poles carved with alien symbols rose high above the roofs. David stopped in surprise, but the girl tugged at his arm, urging him forward. As they entered the clearing, alien faces turned to them, tall figures with glowing skin and sharp, angular features. Their eyes narrowed as they noticed the girl, whispers spreading through the crowd. David could not understand their language, but the tone was harsh, disapproving, like a storm building. The girl lowered her head, clutching his arm tightly, her body trembling. David frowned, realizing she was not welcomed here. One of the villagers, a tall male with dark markings across his skin, stepped forward, his gaze sharp on David and the girl. He spoke in a low growl, pointing at her, then at David. then toward the jungle. David stood still, not moving, though he felt the weight of the crowd pressing on him. The girl whispered something quickly, her voice shaking, and David caught one word. She repeated, "Outcast." It struck him like a blade. She was one of them, yet not accepted, abandoned, perhaps even cursed. David clenched his fists, anger building inside him. How could they reject her, after everything she had endured? The tall male barked another command, his voice sharp, his finger pointing at the girl again. The other villagers began to murmur louder, some turning away, others glaring with disgust. David stepped in front of her, his stance firm, his eyes locked on the man. "I don't care what you think," he said under his breath, his voice steady. "She's with me." The alien man tilted his head, clearly not understanding the words, but the meaning in David's tone was clear. The girl clung to his arm, whispering once more, "Safe with you." David's chest tightened, her voice steady even in the face of her own people. But then a new sound rose from the far side of the village. A deep drum beat, slow and heavy, echoed across the clearing. The villagers turned, their whispers growing frantic. From behind the huts, elders appeared, their bodies draped in woven robes of glowing threads, their faces lined with age and wisdom. They carried staffs carved with strange runes, glowing faintly with the same light as the girl's skin. David felt the weight of their gaze as they approached. The girl bowed her head low, trembling, but the elders did not look at her with kindness. Instead, one of them raised his staff and spoke in a slow, booming voice, the words incomprehensible, but heavy with meaning. The villagers answered with a single word in unison, their voices sharp, "Guardian." David frowned, confusion rising, but then he heard it, faint at first, then stronger. A roar rolled through the jungle, deep and powerful. The same beast, the same golden eyes burned in his mind. The girl gasped, clutching David tighter, her voice breaking. "Guardian, beast," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. David's heart sank, the truth hitting him like a blow. The monster he had fought, the predator that stalked them, was no ordinary creature. It was their guardian, their protector, their test of worth. And by saving her, by defying it, he had broken their law. The villagers glared, some pointing at David, others shouting, their voices rising with anger. The girl sobbed quietly, her head pressed against his arm, as if she already knew what this meant. David's jaw tightened, his body tense. He had saved her life. He had fought with everything he had, and now they wanted to turn that against him. He met the glare of the elders, his eyes unflinching. The beast's roar thundered again from the jungle, closer now, shaking the ground. The villagers did not run, they did not hide, they only stepped back, leaving the center of the clearing open. David realized then, they expected the beast to finish what it started. The girl trembled, whispering through her tears, "Belong to you," as if clinging to one last truth. David gripped the broken remains of his spear, his muscles coiled. The jungle shook as the beast emerged again, golden eyes blazing, its massive body filling the clearing. And in that moment, David knew, this was not just survival anymore. It was defiance. It was humanity, standing against the laws of another world. The ground shook as the beast stepped into the clearing. Its golden eyes glowed like fire, its mane wild and sharp, its teeth flashing in the dim light. The villagers stood silent, their faces calm, their bodies still, as if this moment was sacred. Only David and the alien girl trembled in its presence. David tightened his grip on the broken spear, though he knew it would do little against such a creature. The girl pressed close to him, her hands gripping his arm, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She whispered in her broken voice, "Guardian, come," as if she had expected this all along. The beast lowered its head, growling, the sound so deep it rattled David's bones. It stepped forward slowly, its claws digging into the ground with each step. The villagers began to chant, their voices low and steady, their eyes locked on the scene. David looked around, realizing they would not help. They would not interfere. To them, this was not an attack. This was judgment. The girl cried softly, shaking her head, whispering, "You, save me." But beast no forgive. David swallowed hard, his heart pounding, his body screaming at him to run, but his legs refused to move. He could not run. Not with her clinging to him, not with the beast blocking every escape. The beast roared suddenly, the sound exploding through the clearing like thunder. The villagers raised their staffs and shouted in unison, their voices joining the roar. The girl flinched, pressing her face into David's chest, her tears wetting his shirt. David's jaw clenched, anger boiling inside him. He had bled for her. He had risked his life. And yet her people wanted to throw her to this monster. He stepped forward, pulling her gently behind him. His eyes locked on the golden gaze of the beast. The creature circled them, muscles rippling under its massive body, its growls shaking the ground. David's chest tightened, but his spirit burned bright. He shouted at it, his voice filled with rage and defiance. "You'll have to go through me first." The beast stopped, tilting its massive head, its eyes narrowing at the strange human sound. The villagers gasped softly, whispering to each other, shocked by his defiance. The girl lifted her head, her glowing eyes wide with disbelief. Her lips parted, and she whispered once more, "Belong to you," the words stronger this time, as if she was declaring it to the world. The beast roared again, lunging forward, its massive body crashing into the ground, just a breath away from David. He jumped back, raising his broken spear and slamming it into the beast's shoulder. The wood splintered, the point cutting only shallowly into its thick hide. The beast snarled, snapping its jaws so close that David felt the hot breath scorch his face. The villagers shouted louder, their chants echoing around the clearing, urging the guardian to finish the fight. David ducked under a swipe of the beast's claws, rolling across the dirt, his body aching from the impact. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing a sharp stone from the ground, his hands bleeding as he clutched it tight. The beast spun toward him again, its golden eyes blazing with fury. David's heart thundered, but he held his ground, swinging the stone against the beast's face. The strike made the creature flinch, its roar filled with rage and pain. For the first time, David saw the villagers falter, their chanting breaking for a moment. The girl gasped, stepping forward, her small hands clutching at David's arm as if drawing strength from him. "Strong, human strong," she whispered, her voice breaking with both fear and hope. The beast circled again, blood dripping faintly from its shoulder, its growl deepening. David knew this was not the end. The real fight had only begun, but he also knew something had changed. The villagers no longer looked certain, their eyes shifting between the beast and the human who dared stand against it. The girl leaned close, her voice trembling but steady. "Fight. We together." David looked at her, his chest heavy, and gave the smallest nod. They stood side by side, man and alien girl, against the mighty guardian beast. The jungle seemed to hold its breath. The villagers fell silent again. The beast lowered, its body, muscles coiled, ready for a final charge. David gripped the bloody stone, his body broken, but his spirit unshaken. He had fought before, but now he fought not just for survival. He fought for her, for the bond she had given him, for the whisper that bound them. And as the beast lunged again, its roar splitting the sky, David stepped forward with all the fury and courage of a human who refused to surrender. The clearing shook as the guardian beast charged, its roar tearing through the air like thunder. David tightened his grip on the sharp stone, every muscle in his body screaming, but his spirit burning stronger than ever. The alien girl stood close behind him, her silver hair whipping in the wind. From the beast's movement, her glowing eyes wide with terror and hope. The villagers chanted again, their voices rising in rhythm with the pounding of the beast's claws against the ground. But David no longer heard them. His focus was locked on the golden eyes of the predator rushing toward him. At the last second, he dove to the side, rolling across the dirt, the beast's massive body crashing into the ground where he had stood, sending dust and stones flying. The girl cried out, reaching for him, but David was already on his feet, his chest heaving, his legs unsteady but firm. The beast spun quickly, faster than something so large should move, its mane wild, its jaws snapping. David ducked again, striking its flank with the stone, cutting deep enough to draw blood. The beast howled in rage, whipping its tail and slamming David backward against the ground, the impact knocking the air from his lungs. Pain exploded through his body, but he forced himself to rise, coughing. Blood at the corner of his mouth. The villagers cheered at the beast's strength, but their cheers faltered when David stood again, unbroken. The girl ran to his side, her hands trembling as she touched his arm, her voice breaking. Strong. Fight strong. David nodded, his teeth clenched. The beast lowered itself again, growling deep, preparing for another strike. David's eyes darted around, searching desperately for anything he could use. Then he saw it, the broken spear still lying in the dirt, splintered but sharp at one end. He sprinted for it, the beast lunging after him, the ground shaking under its massive weight. At the last second, David spun, gripping the spear tight, and thrust it upward as the beast leaped. The spear drove deep into the creature's chest. Blood sprang across the ground. The beast roared in pain, its massive body twisting violently, knocking David to the ground again. The spear snapped, but the wound was real. The villagers gasped, their chants breaking, fear flickering in their eyes for the first time. The beast staggered, but it did not fall. Its fury now even greater. It turned its gaze on the girl, its golden eyes blazing. David's heart froze. He saw the beast shifting its weight toward her, ready to strike. No, he shouted, throwing himself forward, tackling the beast's leg with all his strength. The creature roared, trying to shake him off, but David clung to it desperately, his arms locked, his body refusing to let go. The girl cried out, dropping to her knees, whispering words in her language, her voice desperate, pleading. David heard none of it. His world was filled only with the beast's fury. He grabbed another stone from the ground and smashed it again and again into the beast's wounded chest, blood pouring with each strike. The beast bellowed in pain, its body thrashing, claws tearing the earth. David screamed with rage, his arms moving faster, every strike filled with the fire of survival, of defiance, of humanity refusing to bow. Finally, with one last desperate blow, the stone shattered in his hand, but the beast collapsed, its massive body crashing into the dirt, its roar dying into silence. The clearing shook, then grew still. The villagers fell silent, their chants gone, their eyes wide in disbelief. The guardian beast lay motionless, blood staining the ground, its golden eyes dimming into darkness. David dropped to his knees, his chest heaving, his hands covered in blood and dirt, his body trembling with exhaustion. The girl ran to him, falling beside him, her arms wrapping around him tightly. Her tears fell against his skin, but her voice was strong. Safe. With you, she whispered, her words no longer broken but filled with certainty. David held her close, his heart pounding. He had done the impossible. He had killed their guardian. He had broken their law. But he had also proven something far greater. The villagers slowly stepped back, their faces pale, their whispers sharp. Some looked at him with fear, others with awe. None dared come closer. The elders raised their staffs, their eyes burning with confusion and anger. This was not the way their trial was meant to end. Their beast was not meant to be defeated, yet the proof lay before them. Silent and dead, the girl pulled away slightly, her glowing eyes shining with tears. She placed her hand on David's chest and whispered again, "Belong to you," her voice steady, her vow unshaken. David looked at her, and for the first time, he understood. She was not claiming him as property. She was declaring her choice, her loyalty, her bond. She had chosen him, and he had chosen her, against All odds against her people, against the laws of the jungle. The beast was gone. But David knew this was not the end. The villagers would not forgive easily. The elder's eyes promised more battles to come, but as the girl leaned into him, her body warm, her voice whispering together, he knew he would face them all, because he was human, and humans did not bow to fate. They fought, they endured, and they protected those who belonged to them. The clearing was silent. The guardian beast lay still on the ground, its golden eyes dim, its massive body broken. Smoke from the broken fire pit drifted into the air. Mixing with the heavy scent of blood, David stood weakly, his chest rising and falling, his body covered in bruises and cuts, his hands red from the battle. Beside him, the alien girl clung to his arm, her silver hair glowing faintly under the rising moon. Her eyes were wet with tears, but her voice was strong as she whispered again. Together, the villagers stared in shock, their chants gone, their voices hushed. They had watched the guardian fall, something no one believed possible. Now their sacred law was broken, and fear rippled through them. The elders stepped forward, their glowing staffs raised high, their faces cold and unreadable. One of them pointed his staff at David, speaking words heavy with anger, the meaning clear even without translation. The villagers murmured again, some fearful, some furious. The girl pressed closer to David, shaking her head, her lips trembling as she whispered, "They hate me." David's jaw tightened, his eyes fixed on the elders. He knew the truth now. She had been cast out, left to die, hunted by their beast because she did not belong. But in saving her, he had broken their judgment. He had claimed her life, when they had already given her to death. And now, in their eyes, he was the true threat. The elders struck their staffs into the ground, the sound echoing like thunder. The villagers bowed their heads, waiting for a command. David raised his chin, his body still trembling but his spirit unbroken. He shouted in his own tongue, his voice loud and clear, "She belongs to no one but herself." The words meant nothing to them, but the tone carried through the air. Defiant, strong, unshaken, the girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes wide, her lips parted, as if she understood. She placed her small hand on his chest, her voice, trembling but sure, "Belong to you." David felt his heart tighten at her words. It was not about ownership, not about chains or rules. It was about choice. She had chosen him, freely, fully, in defiance of her people and their laws. The elders raised their staffs again, but the villagers hesitated, their eyes uncertain. Some looked at David with fear, others with awe. They had seen what he had done. They had watched him stand where none of them could. The beast's body lay as proof that strength did not only belong to their kind. The jungle stirred, the night wind carrying the cries of unseen creatures. David knew they could not stay. The villagers might turn on them at any moment. He looked at the girl, her glowing face lit by the moon, her small body trembling but unyielding. He took her hand firmly and whispered, "We leave now." She nodded, her lips trembling into the smallest smile. "Together," she repeated, her word now a vow that echoed in his heart. They moved slowly toward the edge of the clearing. Every step heavy under the stares of the villagers. No one stopped them. No one dared. The elders' eyes burned with fury. But even they did not command the crowd to move. Perhaps they feared him. Or perhaps they feared what he represented. A human who had broken their guardian. A stranger who had defied their laws. And an outcast girl who had found strength in him. When they reached the jungle's edge, the girl looked back one last time, her eyes shining. She whispered softly, more to herself than to him, "No more alone." The trees swallowed them as they disappeared into the shadows. The jungle was alive again, filled with strange sounds. But David felt different now. He was not running blindly. He was walking with purpose, with her at his side. The girl leaned against him as they moved, her voice soft and steady, repeating the word again and again. "Together, together, together." And David realized that for the first time since arriving on this hostile world, he was not alone either. He had found someone who believed in him, someone who needed him, someone who had chosen him. The beast had fallen, the villagers had turned their backs, but none of that mattered anymore. The bond was stronger than their laws, stronger than their fear, stronger than the jungle itself. They were two souls from different worlds, bound not by chains, but by trust, by choice, by belonging. As dawn rose over the alien horizon, painting the sky with colors no human eyes had ever seen, the girl pressed her lips close to his ear and whispered one last time, "Balan." Her voice was no longer trembling. It was filled with strength, with love, with truth. And David knew then, whatever waited ahead, beasts, villages, even whole worlds, he would face it, because she had chosen him, and he had chosen her, and together, they would defy everything.